Welcome to Calvary Baptist Church, Idaho Falls, where we seek to glorify God, make disciples, and take the gospel to the nations. For more information about our church, please visit www.calvaryidahofalls.org.
We're in our second week of our sermon series on this book entitled Hopeless. And you may say, Pastor, you know, that's an awful title for a sermon series. So you have to look at the graphic, right? So we've circled hope and we've marked out less. And so the thesis behind this is that Solomon is pointing out throughout the book of Ecclesiastes that we only find real hope when we quit living for what is less. And there are so many things in this life, so many pursuits, so many things that on the surface are good. You know, they're not bad things, but when they become the ultimate thing to us, in the end, they bring misery. In the end, they bring disappointment. They do not bring joy. They do not bring hope. So King Solomon in this book is exploring life under the sun and all the vain things we live for that can never satisfy the true longing of our soul. And as we talked about last week, if your translation says meaningless a lot, right, that's a bad translation. It should say vanity or something along those lines. And the actual Hebrew word means this. It means mist or vapor or breath, right? So the idea is it's something that is real, right? But it's something that is very short-lived. It's something that is here today and gone tomorrow. It's not anything that we can really grasp a hold of, like your breath on a really cold morning. It's there, but not for long. And if you try to reach out and grab it, you will not be able to hold it. And so this morning we're going to look at the vanity of knowledge and wisdom. Now I want to say up front, we here at Calvary Baptist are not anti-intellectual. We are studying the Word of God. So we're not saying be stupid, right? But we're saying this, and the author of Ecclesiastes is saying this, that we need to explore, we need to understand, we need to seek truth, right? He has written this entire book as an exploration of the meaning of life and why we're here. But what we need to understand is that learning and wisdom are good things. But when they become the ultimate thing, if they're the aim of our life, if intellectual pursuit and understanding is the thing that we base our life on, if I can just get more knowledge, if I can just get another degree, if I can just graduate from this, then everything will be wonderful. If I can just figure out that secret. Anybody found that yet? Right? That secret to life, that thing that just makes everything good. Right? But there is this belief, there's this understanding that there's knowledge out there that I need, that I have to have. Right? And when we bank our lives on that, there is disappointment. So let's look at Ecclesiastes chapter 1, beginning with verse 12. He says, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. And I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly, and I perceive that this is also but a striving after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So again, be greatly encouraged this morning as you read the book of Ecclesiastes. As we talked about last week, Ecclesiastes is not a pep talk, right? We're looking at wisdom literature, and wisdom literature in the Bible is very real. It looks at life and it says, this is the reality. And Solomon is looking at life. He is trying to say, I want to know. I'm trying to find out. What is the meaning? What is the purpose? Why are we here? And so Solomon was wise. God had given him great wisdom and he said, I'm going to use this intellect. I'm going to use my pursuit of knowledge to try to find out as much as I can. And he says, you know what I found out? It's miserable here. It's miserable here. Now, that's real talk, folks. I mean, that's not like a pat on the back, hey, everything's going to be okay. But have you looked around? Right? Have you spent a few minutes contemplating what's going on in your life, in this community, in this culture, in this world? It is rough here. And so Solomon is looking at the reality, and I want you to see what he says. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. Now, on the surface, it might seem that he's blaming God here. We're going to look at it a little bit later, another passage in Ecclesiastes that shows he's not blaming God, but he is showing that God is in control. He's realizing what is going on. And what we see here is the fall of man in full effect. Solomon is saying the brokenness you see around you, right? This emptiness, this hurt, this pain, this struggle in this life is because God has cursed the world because of our rebellion against him. Right? Go all the way back to Genesis chapter 3 when Adam and Eve did what God told them not to do. They ate the fruit of what? Knowledge of good and evil, right? In their great pursuit of wanting to be wise, of wanting to know, they said, we want to be God. And they exchanged the truth of God for a lie. And they believed the serpent. They believed the created instead of the creator. And God brought curses upon them because of their rebellion, right? And remember the curses? Women, think about it. Childbirth, awesome, right? Wonderful. It is a great thing. It's a beautiful thing, but it's painful. You can thank Adam and Eve, right? Married couples, right? You ever struggle with your spouse? Is there ever enmity? Is there ever strife? You ever fight? You can thank Adam and Eve. It's right there. It's one of the curses, right? That we will try to rule over one another. Right? You ever don't like work? Right? You ever think work is like a four-letter word? I know it has 4 letters, but I mean, like the real 4-letter words, like you're upset, right? You're mad, and there's struggle with other people, and it's hard, and you're just like, man, this ought to be easier. You can thank Adam and Eve, right? I mean, God said, listen, you're going to get the fruit of the ground, but you're going to get it by the sweat of your brow, and there's going to be thorns and thistles and problems and all of these kinds of things. And ultimately, Ecclesiastes is talking about no matter what you do, you know what happens in the end? You die. Anybody ever contemplate the fact that you've got a very limited amount of time here on earth, and as you're getting closer to that date, to those, as you grow older, maybe you're thinking about it a little bit more? Right? Death is the enemy of us all. Well, you can thank Adam and Eve, right? And the reality is death is a curse. It is a curse because of our sin and rebellion. And so here Solomon is not just trying to be negative, he's trying to be real. He says, I have explored this. I have thought about this. I have investigated this. And instead of trying to put some happy-go-lucky spin on it, I want you to know it is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with because we're living in a broken world. And he says, I've seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, it is vanity, it is mist, it is vapor. The greatest inventions, the most powerful speeches, right? The most effective medicines, the greatest cures. It's all vanity, it's all mist, it's all vapor, it's all striving after the wind. And ultimately, this is what he says. He gives us a little proverb here. He says, what is crooked cannot be made straight. And what is lacking cannot be counted. Right? It doesn't matter how wise you are. no matter how much knowledge you have, you cannot fix all the brokenness of this world. You can't. Now I'm not advocating, and Solomon is not going to advocate here, though, that we just throw our hands up and give up. Oh, well, I can't fix it. But he is pointing out that human ingenuity and brilliance and understanding and knowledge is not going to solve the world's problems. It's not going to solve our country's problems. It's not going to solve your family's problems. What is crooked cannot be made straight by you. And what is lacking, you can't even count it. Have you ever had someone in your life that, just brokenness upon brokenness, and you love this person and you tried to help this person, but the more you tried to help, the more frustrating it became because you just realized, I am powerless to fix them. And I could pour my entire life and existence into them, and they would swallow me up like an ocean. Because what is lacking in their life cannot even be counted. Solomon is saying that is our world. And look, folks, this is not happy, but this is real. This is the reality that we live in. And until we start living in reality, we cannot seek what is truly hope. What is lacking cannot be counted. Solomon's bleak prognosis. This is it. No matter how much I learn, study, or know, I cannot straighten out what is crooked. I cannot count what is lacking. And then he says, in the end, my knowledge and wisdom amounts to chasing the wind. You ever tried that? I can't quite ever get it. Right? I don't know if you've ever dropped anything in Idaho when the wind's blowing, right? Which is all the time. Right, I was at the hospital a couple of months ago, and some papers flew out of my truck, and so I'm there in the big parking lot there at Ermac, and it just keeps going, right? I'm trying to run it and run to it, and as it always happens, about the time you reach down and grab it, another gust of wind comes up and takes it even more, and before I know it, I am across the street. I didn't even look. I probably would have died, right? I'm in like the hospital workers parking lot over there, and then I found and it's like a worthless piece of paper. Like, I don't even know why I got it. I thought maybe, like, there's a social security number on here. I better go chase this down. And it was like, I should just let it go. Right? But that feeling, right, when you're chasing something and you're trying to grab it, and every time you try to grab it, it just keeps blowing away from you. That is what Solomon is describing here. That is our pursuit. That is what we are trying to do and to solve our problems, our family's problems, the world's problems, and we just can't ever get it, no matter how much we learn and know and understand. And so the second point here is that you and I are limited. Right? Can I say amen? We're limited this morning. Again, it's encouraging to you today. And it will be encouraging because I want to show you why. Because if you thought you weren't limited, you'd be really desperate this morning. But I want you to notice this. Solomon starts out in verse 12. He says, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. Solomon knows that he's limited. I don't think that it's just a coincidence that he starts this section by telling you who he is. But also, you say, well, wow, he's the king. But Solomon, what does he do? He tells you what he's the king over. He says, I'm the king over Israel in Jerusalem. I'm not the king of the world. Right? I'm a pretty powerful guy. Right? The Bible describes as one of the wisest men on earth, great riches and power and control of all this. But Solomon said, I am only the king of Israel. And then what does he do? But he says, God is in control of it all, right? That's what he tells us. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of men. Right? God is ultimately the one who's in control. Solomon, even as the king, as the wisest man, richest man, all of these things that we want, that we wish, hey, I wish I had that. It might not solve my problems, but it'd be fun for a minute, right? And Solomon says, with all of this, I know that I am limited. And even in my great wisdom, I am searching these things, and it does not work. Verse 16, he says, I've said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly, and I perceived all of this as but a striving after the wind. He says, I keep trying, but I can't do it. I understand that I am limited. And you and I need to come to that place where we realize, and most of us probably do, we know, we struggle every single day, and we don't think that we've got it all figured out, but somehow we fool ourselves that if I can just learn this, then I won't be. If I can just figure this out, then I won't be limited anymore. I'll be able to achieve. I'm looking at this person over here. I'm looking at this family. And man, they think they got life figured out. And man, their kids behave. You don't go home with them. Right? You're like, man, they're the happiest couple on the earth. They got marriage figured out. You don't go home with them. Right? And so we think, if I can just gain this understanding and this knowledge and this wisdom, Solomon says, no. You were limited on purpose. And we'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, some more encouragement. Verse 18. This is Solomon's conclusion of this passage that we've read so far this morning. He says, for in much wisdom is much vexation. And he who increases in knowledge increases in sorrow. So by gaining knowledge, I lose certainty and gain sorrow. Right? Is it better to know one way to fix something or 100 ways when 65 of them don't work? Or maybe 99? Right? Have you ever tried to look something up on YouTube? YouTube is awesome to try to fix things, like for DIY people. But sometimes those people don't know what they're doing. Anybody can make a video. You know what? They can. And you get to the end of 10 minutes and you realize this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Right? So then you're watching 50 videos and then you're more confused than you were before. Right? Sometimes knowledge doesn't solve the problem, because if you've got 100 different answers, then you're less certain of what the answer was before you even started. Because all knowledge is not equal. Right? You can keep up with the Kardashians. Maybe some of you do. I don't know. That's knowledge. But it won't fix your problems or cure any diseases. Right? All knowledge is not equal. There's a difference between knowledge and truth. And as a follower of Jesus, you should not be afraid of the truth. You should actually be a truth seeker, because all truth is God's truth. So truth in any area of life is God's truth. And you should not be afraid of that. You should seek that. But folks, just building your knowledge base doesn't mean that you're building your truth base. You can know a lot about a lot of things and be really, really confused. But you can know very little about what is most important, about the truth of God, and be in the right place where God wants you to be. Right? In college, I ran across a book written by a serious scholar. This wasn't just like some crazy person, right? He was one of the translators of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but in all of his knowledge gaining, he wrote a book where he thought Jesus was a mushroom. Now, I didn't read that book because I didn't need to. right? Because that's silliness, right? But this learned person had filled his head with so much knowledge that he thought he had a revolutionary idea. Jesus was a hallucinogenic mushroom. Craziness, right? So by gaining knowledge, we often lose certainty and gain sorrow. Have you ever thought, I wish I didn't know that? Somebody ever tell you ignorance is bliss, right? There's some truth to that, right? I mean, you get involved in someone's life and you begin to learn more about their situation. You just wish, I wish I didn't know. Right? I'm glad I can pray for you, but there's some details I wish you just leave out. Because the more I'm finding out about this situation, the more sorrowful I am feeling. And the more, right, I mean, you people that are watching Fox News 24 hours a day, I don't see how you don't go jump off a bridge somewhere, because you're just gaining all this knowledge about all this stuff. And it's not good. So where does this leave us, right? Well, thanks be to God, this isn't the end of Solomon's talk about wisdom in the book of Ecclesiastes. Flip over to Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, and we're going to be looking at verses 25 through 29. And you can go back and read the entirety of chapter 7. We're not going to go through that, but he is contrasting wisdom and folly, right? With, and he's just saying, look, it is more important to be wise, and it's good to make wise choices, right? So again, Solomon's not throwing out all wisdom. But he comes to the end of this chapter, and he says something very, very striking. And I want you to know the things that Solomon struggles with. If you've never done a study of Solomon's life, I mean, Solomon struggled with a lot of things. And his heart was led astray from the Lord because he kept marrying all these foreign women, right? I mean, he was very rich, he was very powerful, he was very wise, he had all this kind of stuff. But Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines, right? Which were basically royal prostitutes, I mean, just to be honest with you. Right, so remember that, 700, 300, 700 plus 300 is what? 1,000. Okay, remember that as we're reading this. All right, here we go. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, beginning with verse 25. He said, I turn my heart to know and to search out and to seek wisdom and the scheme of things, and to know the wickedness of folly and the foolishness that is madness. And I find something more bitter than death. I mean, just up front, right? I mean, this is just worse as it can be. Don't be offended, half the people in the room. He says, the woman whose heart is snares and nets, whose hands are fetters, he who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. We'll stop right there for a second. Solomon is, in his search for wisdom and understanding, has come face to face with his own brokenness and sin. And he said, in all my search for knowledge and all my search for wisdom, this is what I find. That the lust of my heart has captured me and broken me every single time. I may have a lot of knowledge and I may have a lot of wisdom, but every single time I fall in the hole when it comes to women. And the righteous man, he can escape, but the sinner is ensnared. And you know who I am? I'm the sinner. That's what Solomon is saying here. Let's go on, verse 27. He says, behold, this is what I found, says the preacher, while adding one thing to another to find the scheme of things, which my soul has sought repeatedly, but I have not found. One man among 1,000 have I found, but a woman among all these I have not found. See, this alone I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. So Solomon almost here, there's one more passage we're going to look at. He's kind of summing up what he has learned and investigated and found out in this search for truth, of knowledge and of wisdom. And Solomon has come and he has said, God made us good, but we had better ideas. You know, when we look back at chapter 1 and it looked like Solomon was blaming everything on God, like it's a miserable thing that God has given us to live this life under the sun. And now Solomon, a little bit more investigation, has come back and he said, listen, it's our fault. God made us good. God made us upright. God made us righteous, but we thought we knew better. And we schemed and we plotted and everything fell apart. And just so you think that he's not lauding the righteous man and maybe you can attain it, I'm just not the righteous man, go back up to verse 20 of this same chapter, and he says this. He says, surely there is not a righteous man on the earth who does good and never sins. So Solomon's being really honest here that even the righteous person is broken. Right? He's taking us right back here to Genesis 3, and he's pointing this out, right? Again, one of the problems. Genesis chapter 3, what is it? That there would be enmity between the man and the woman. And Solomon has tried over 1,000 times. Now, he's been looking for the wrong thing in women, to be honest about it. But he said, I haven't found a single woman like that I can, and he says, there's 1 in 1,000 men, right, that I can connect with, that I can trust. But he said, I haven't found any women. He said, it's a struggle. There's all this brokenness, and my heart is led astray, and all of these things are happening. And he says, the reason, right, the reason that this has happened is because God made us good. But we had better ideas. Wisest man on earth says, listen, we messed it up. We messed it up. We did this. Quit blaming God. Quit, trying to make all of this God's fault or your parents' fault or your kids' fault or your boss's fault or whatever. The blame lays on you and the blame lays on me. We keep being ensnared by our passions and we are broken. And the Bible says it doesn't matter how much we know. In fact, I don't want to be real honest with you this morning. It doesn't matter how much of this you know if it doesn't change your heart. If it doesn't transform your mind. If you don't submit and surrender to it. Which is ultimately submitting and surrendering to God. Right, I'm from Georgia, and I know there's some rednecks in Idaho, but there's a lot of them in Georgia, right? Sorry, Horsley family. There he is. They know it. I'll have Jimmy stand up. He'll be my redneck illustration this morning. Right? But rednecks always think they have a better way to fix something or to make it better, right? We took a normal truck that you just drive around, and we jack it up so high that you got to have a stepladder to get inside. And we put an engine in it so big that you only get a half a mile a gallon. Right? But, hey, it's awesome. Look at my truck. Can't drive it anywhere. Can't take anybody for a ride without a ladder. Right? You ever been to a fair? Ever ate the food at a fair? A redneck came up with that stuff. Deep fried candy bars, I promise you. That wasn't an engineer. That was some redneck sitting around, threw a candy bar in some grease and said, wow, look at this. I mean, and I know here hunting is like public land stuff, so people have little deer stands and stuff that you put up and take down. In the South, people like own the property or they lease it, and they build like these Taj Mahal deer stands. Like, I mean, they got kitchens in them. And beds and heaters. I mean, it's better than the double wide that they're living in. Right? I mean, we got schemes, people. This is what Solomon is talking about. God said, I have put you in a perfect place. I've given you everything you need. And then someone comes around and whispers, but you know what? There's one tree that you can't eat from. And you know why you can't eat from that? Because God wants to keep you ignorant. Because God knows when you eat from that tree, you'll be like God. Folks, some people say pride is the original sin. Maybe so, but this is the reality. The original sin had to do with us wanting to know what God said you don't need to know. Because you're not me. Folks, we need to realize we're limited, but that God is not. That he's on the throne, and we don't have to be. One more passage, one more thing right here at the end. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, beginning with verse 16. He says, when I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day or night do one's eyes see sleep. And then all the work of God that man cannot find out, that work that is done under the sun, however much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. People cannot be God. Now you say, well, hey, I'm a Christian. I know that. I can't be God. But we're always trying. We're always trying to do that which only God can do. We're always trying to know that which only God knows. Instead of resting in him, instead of trusting him, instead of surrendering to him, we're fighting and striving. Solomon tried his best to figure out the ways of God and kept coming up empty. And he gave specific parameters. He said, all I'm trying to figure out is what God does under the sun. He said, I'm not even talking about heaven. I'm not even talking about beyond time. I'm just trying to figure it out here on earth, and I can't figure it out. And then he makes a really honest claim here about people who claim to be wise. He said, you know what? They're lying. You ever meet somebody who tells you that they know it all and that they've got it figured out? They're lying. He says that, right? He says, even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. So why are we pretending? But there is hope. The Word became flesh. The truth was personified. What we have been looking for came looking for us. We want to know, but it's better to be known. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1 through 3, the Apostle Paul is talking to the Christians there in Corinth who are saying that they have this special knowledge and they know these things. And so because they know these things, they should be able to do these things. And Paul says, but in your knowledge, you are causing other people to stumble. And so this is what he says. He says, this knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. If anyone imagines that he knows something, he does not yet know it as he ought to know. But if anyone loves God, he is known by God. Paul says, listen, this is the greatest thing. It's not to know, but to be known. I mean, that's really, he boils it all down. He says, that's really what your heart is searching for. That's what you're striving after. You want to be known. Right? You want to be loved. You want to be cared for. You want to be forgiven. You want somebody to know the depths of your soul and to look at you and say, I love you anyway. And that's exactly what God has done. And he says, if you know him, if you have trusted in him as your Savior and Lord, then the greatest joy is yours because you are known by God. Rest in that today. Yes, seek truth. Don't back away from that. Don't ever quit pursuing truth, but know that you are limited, but that God is not. And as long as we surrender and rest in him, that our days on this earth don't have to be filled with misery, but our days can be filled with hope because he's coming back again. He's coming back to rescue us. He's coming back to save us, and we should be longing for that day and spreading the hope of Jesus to those who desperately need to know it. Let's pray.